Ah, the 80s. A time when TV shows were all about pretty people, exotic locations, and blowing shit up. We might not have had nudity, backstories, plots sometimes, or character development, but one thing we did have was violence. In fact, you could shoot as many people as you wanted, as long as nobody died. Join me as we look back at my all-time top 5 favorite 80s action TV shows. So today we're taking a look at my favorite action TV shows from the 80s in no particular order. A few of the reasons we loved them then and why they're kind of weird now. One of the interesting things about the 80s was sometimes one of the characters was actually a car. And that's the case with our first entry in the list, the Dukes of Hazzard. Building off the success of Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, and other car-themed movies, the Dukes of Hazzard brought that to prime time. CB radios were all the rage, Daisy Duke wore the short shorts, and Bo and Luke were fairly handsome themselves. Add in the cars, the chases, and the jumps, and you've got yourself a winning formula. The weirdest thing about going back and watching Dukes of Hazzard now is actually the car chases and driving. They drive and shoot driving and film driving constantly, and it's really, really slow paced. I got a feeling you could cut out 20% of the show and still have a pretty good show by today's standards, but it's always going to be a classic. A Dixie horn and an orange car are always going to have a special place in my memory. Next up, the ATeam. That's right, in 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they did not commit. That's right, I memorized it. I didn't have to, actually. It's been there since 1982. My favorite thing about the A-Team back then was the building montage that they always did when they were putting together some sort of battle ram or modifying a car into a tank or modifying a bulldozer into a submarine. I don't know. They always had to build something, and Murdoch and Mr. T could throw it together in no time with a blowtorch and just a couple of bolts and nuts. The weirdest thing about this show is one that I alluded to in the intro a while ago, and that's the fact that nobody ever dies. They shoot millions and millions of bullets, they blow up everything, and the bad guys always get up and brush the dirt off, and nobody dies. I guess they had to do that for the censors. I don't know, but it's super weird that they shoot at everybody, and nobody ever dies. The next entry in our list is The Fall Guy, and this is another one where the car was a pretty important part, except for it wasn't a car, it was a truck. It's one of the coolest trucks. I've seen one of them in person, and it had Heather Thomas. Those are my two favorite things. The truck, Heather Thomas, equally in my heart. Lee Majors, I could take him or leave him, but still a cool show. It was one of those shorter-lived ones, but it was still a cool show. And if we were actually ranking my favorites on the list of the top 5, we would probably put this one at number 1, Simon and Simon. Simon and Simon was set in California, exotic location, pretty women, cool cars, bro comedy. The brothers buddy cop thing was a fun part too. Plus, it had Tim Reed from WKRP in Cincinnati, and he was a great actor. It was a great show. Looking back on it now, the pacing is kind of weird, and the storylines are a little bit weak sometimes, but they definitely had decent actors and a cool place to film. Last on the list is the guy who now wants to sell you a reverse mortgage, but back then he was just the cool private detective. He had the whole Navy backstory. I said a while ago we didn't get backstories, but we actually did with Magnum PI. He had the I got booted out of the Navy over a crisis of conscience story. That was pretty cool. It was in Hawaii. He got to drive a cool car. He was always around beautiful women, so it checks most of the boxes. The weirdest thing looking back on this one has to be Tom Selleck's shorts. Other than that, still a pretty good show. Which ones did I leave out? Do you have a favorite 80s action show that I should have put on the list? If so, comment below, give me a like, give me a follow, and I'll see you next time.